Hi, I'm Chuck Olynyk. I'm a reenactor. And for 36 years, I used living history in the classroom to try to bring the subject to life for my students. And that would mean I would wear the garb, not costumes, garb, for whatever time period we were covering in whatever culture. And I would stand before them all day, dressed funny, which got their attention, also got the attention of a number of colleagues, and that started to make the subject more real for my kids. But I would also try to immerse them in the culture as much as I could by playing the music for whatever we were studying in the background, so I kind of had a soundtrack to history going. And with a now playing board, my students were able to actually learn music. I would surround them with the art of the time period, and I'd bring in realia or manipulatives. That's the fancy teacher talk for artifacts, things kids could touch, to make it a kid-friendly museum. Since I was one of those annoying kids that would try to touch everything in a museum, I kind of understood my students' need to be able to do that. And it kicked into different modes of learning or modalities of learning. Well, I'm not in the classroom anymore. But after 36 years of teaching, I sure have a lot of garb at home. There's a room at the house that's filled to capacity. And actually, some of the garb is now in different parts of the house. I want to be able to put that to use. I also still have a passion for bringing history to life, which is why I'm involved in historical reenactment groups on the weekends. And I have a desire to preserve landmarks, since landmarks disappear. They go away. They get paved over or simply get removed, and the stories can be forgotten. I also like to play amateur anthropologist and amateur archaeologist and history detective. I like to follow the threads of history and see where they lead. So what I'm involved in right now that I'm not in the classroom anymore, is I'm repurposing myself, and I'm working on what I very pretentiously call my Mission Odyssey. And it is basically the goal to visit each of the sites of Alta California connected with the mission era, and a bit beyond that, and to tell the stories of these places while I'm in garb. So that means I'm visiting the missions themselves. I'm also visiting the Asistencias, and those are the spin-off missions, or stations that were intended to become missions ultimately, most of which didn't. Estancias, those are the ranchos or ranch stations that were supposed to support the missions and raise food, and most of those are paved over or have housing developments on them. And the presidios, those are the fortifications designed to protect the missions, and whatever else happens to catch my fancy, whether it's old mission dams or just some of the infrastructure that supported the missions. Well, what I'm doing now is I'm on my way back to Mission Santa Cruz because I messed up. Actually, I didn't so much mess up. I found too much information, and I tend to overpack. So I found information that I don't want to be lost. I don't want it to disappear. So I felt it was necessary to come back and continue telling the story. So I hope you stick with me on my journey. On December 14th, 1793, it's going to be the only large-scale raid on a mission. It's going to take place here, and there were some raiders that came from the village of Cruz It, near Point Año Nuevo, and they wounded some of the soldados. They burned the guardhouse, and they burned like a lamb corral. And then they took off. Okay. Well, the punitive expedition is going to take place early in 1794, and soldados from the Presidio at San Francisco, which was actually supposed to be protecting Mission Santa Cruz, and soldados from the Presidio at Monterey, which was just across the bay, they ended up meeting. They conducted their expedition. They captured 8 of the natives who were involved in the attack, and the leaders were sent to the Presidio at San Diego, where they eventually perished. Okay, now we're going to end up with some trouble. In 1797, Governor Diego de Borica ended up establishing a pueblo, and it was fairly close to the mission, and the Padres were not very happy because they thought that, well, the people in the pueblo might be a bad influence on the neophytes. But what ended up happening is, nope, the viceroy told the governor, this is happening, this is a thing. And this became part of the Spanish plan of laying claim to Alta California and filling it with bodies. They were supposed to use the missions to convert the native population, not only to the Catholic faith, but also to Spanish culture, and teach them trades and make them productive. And eventually, far distant plan was ideally 10 years after a mission was founded, the natives should be ready to be given their own ranchos or buy their own ranchos and establish those and be good, productive citizens of the Spanish Empire. And the presidios were supposed to guard these missions, but also to get more people in, there were supposed to be pueblos established. Except that there were a number of issues here. One of the issues was nobody wanted to come to California. And there were all sorts of recruiting incentives and talk of planned communities laid out in a rectangle, and how the land would be divided. There would be land for the pueblo, and it would be kept separate from the land from the missions, and how it would be divided and used. And it was a lot like the way the Romans had planned communities for retired veterans. And that was part of the plan, was stick veterans, stick retirees in these pueblos, and they'll be on call. Well, that didn't happen the way it was supposed to happen. First of all, the pueblo was established, wasn't even supposed to be within a Spanish league of the mission, and that's about 3 miles distance. This one was established within a mile of the Mission Santa Cruz. So the Padres were really unhappy with this. And also one of Borica's subordinates, he saw the recruits, and he described them as, well, it looked like they'd cleaned out the jails in Mexico and shipped convicts and their families north, which might have been more of an exaggeration, because remember, the Padres, who were really writing a lot of the history, were writing about how unhappy they were. But even Borica's subordinate said, "Oh no, if these guys were 1,000,000 miles away, that might be okay." So now there's going to be tension. There was another problem. The proposed pueblo was not laid out the way it was supposed to be. The houses were not ready. And so these new settlers who showed up, they aren't getting what they were promised either. A lot of the Padres' worst fears come true. They meet the settlers that have come to inhabit the Villa de Branciforte. They look like they've been cleaned out of some of the prisons in Mexico, and they brought their families along. They sure don't seem like they're very interested in working the land. They were apparently lazy. They viewed the neophytes as their slaves and wanted them to work their fields. And then there was all the drinking and gambling that was going on within the pueblo, which was serving as a temptation for some of the neophytes, which the Padres were really flipping out about. And I guess one of the other big examples of the way that set up like red flags for the Padres was one of the first things that the people in the pueblo build is a racetrack. And they were also fighting dogs there. They were also having bear baiting going on, and there were bears in the area. And this isn't a really good image, and the Padres are freaking out, going, "Oh, no. We got to keep the neophytes away." So what the Padres are going to start doing is instituting very, very strict discipline. And the neophytes aren't going to be happy with that. The natives are not only enduring change to the way they've lived, they are also realizing, and everyone's figuring out, they have no resistance to the diseases that the Spanish brought. And so a lot of them are getting wiped out, and the attempts at trying to stop the epidemics by the Padres are coming up empty. Attempts by native healers are coming up empty. And so now you have a lot of the neophytes just running away from the mission. And that's getting the Padres very frustrated. And so they are really starting to enforce a very strict discipline.
Well, that didn't quite go as planned. Turns out that there's a lot more information for Mission Santa Cruz than I thought there was, so I have to come back. I hope you stick with me.